So as you can see here, we're in the STEMWerkz channel, and you can have a look at the different resources for the human respiratory, but also the circulatory system. So going down, for example, then you've got the different resources that give you a quick overview there. And then also you've got the different stories which go a bit further into detail. And then you've got, you can actually load more here. And then it keeps going into further resources that are about photosynthesis and oxygen and gas and so on. So if we want to go into one particular area, such as the human body, then we can have a look here. For example, if we want a particular interactive resource, then you'll be able to get a quick overview on the right-hand side. And here, for example, which is particularly about the human, like our body systems and how they all work together. So just to give you a quick idea.
Our digestive, circulatory, and respiratory systems work together to keep our body healthy. Digestion begins in the mouth and only ends in the small intestine. From the mouth, the partially digested food moves down the gullet and into the stomach for further digestion. Digestion continues in the small intestine. After digestion is completed here, the digested food is then being absorbed into our blood. From this, we can see that the digestive and circulatory systems work very closely together to transport food to all parts of our body for the energy our cells need to survive. Now, let's look at the respiratory system. During inhalation, oxygen enters the lungs. When oxygen from the inhaled air reaches the lungs, it is absorbed into the blood and transported to all parts of the body. At the same time, carbon dioxide and water vapor from the blood in the circulatory system enter the lungs to be removed from the respiratory system when we exhale. From this, we can also see that the respiratory and circulatory systems work very closely with each other. First time, drag and drop the science vocabulary to match the diagrams of the body systems.
Okay, so as we can see then, it's, you know, there is kind of this thing of like, oh, well, you know, we're doing organs, we're not really doing the respiratory system. But what's really good about this resource, I think, is that it combines the different areas. And so it really shows, it gives a more kind of global, holistic learning. Whereas APELS is very much specifically on, you know, testing and evaluating the specifics. This is more about, okay, let's look at the whole aspect of the human body and the curriculum. You know, so it's less kind of evaluation and diagnostic focused and more kind of trying to find the connections between the different parts. So I've just done that kind of randomly because I want to show you what happens next.
Try again.
So as you can see, there are different parts that are wrong. And so this part obviously is correct. And so it would just mean that you could either do this together as a group in the class, or they can do it individually in their workstations, or if they're at home, then they can practice at home. I just want to then link this to what you have in APELS. So for example, here then we've been looking at the respiratory system and the digestive system. So you can match that with APELS by having a look, by actually going into these two here. So you've got beyond the respiratory system, and then you've got the human digestive system. And then you can ask students, okay, let's have a look at this diagram. And the diagram shows two organ systems working together. Which of the following parts are not belonging to the digestive system? Which of the following organs do not belong to the human digestive system? Which part A, B, C, or D represents large intestine in the diagram below? And then it goes on. And what you can see is the progress through this bar, and you can actually keep then going back to this particular resource and either get the students to keep going on this particular interactive activity, or you can go on to another activity here, for example, the respiratory system, or you can have a look at the organs, which is in one of these stories. Let me just have a look. So for example, here, then you have many stories. So you can see that there are 7 stories on the side there. And this one is an interactive activity.
The digestive system is responsible for the digestion and absorption of food we consume. However, not every organ in the digestive system is involved in digestion of food. Here's a diagram of the human digestive system. Select the organs involved in digestion. Digestion does not take place in the large intestine. The large intestine absorbs excess water from the remaining undigested food.
Try again.
So what I love about this activity is that you can get real-time feedback, whereas in this activity, if we just, if we go back to here, then you can go through the actual exercises, but it doesn't, for the students, give real-time feedback. So that's the difference between, say, doing the exercises in APELS and doing the exercises in the STEMWerkz channel. And this can be done in the class, so you could put it up on the Google Classroom, I'm sorry, the whiteboard, but if you're doing it in terms of the homeschooling, then you can do it in the Google Classroom, and you can have the students using their Google Classroom, and everyone is together on the same page. And you can ask the students to shout out, okay, can you tell me which organs in this particular exercise are where the digestion is taking place? And as you saw, then, you know, if somebody says large intestine, you can click on that, or the students can click on that. If you're in the classroom and you want to do it like a run up to the board, or run up to the station, or even in pairs. And in that way, then they can find out, oh no, actually the large intestine is not part of the digestive system. And then it actually explains it. So it gives you that real-time feedback, which is really great.
You're correct.
So I love this because it kind of gives you this kind of...
The small intestine also produces digestive juices that completes the digestion of various food substances. The digestive juices completely break down food into simple substances to be absorbed by the walls of the small intestine.
So yeah, the other thing that is great about this is that it gives you kind of motivation, like, you know, yes, you're correct, but then it also explains it. And the thing about APELS is that whilst, you know, it's very much, you know, geared towards testing their knowledge, then it doesn't give you real feedback. And if you don't know the answer, so for example, if I say skip, then no, I really don't know the answer. It actually then just goes on to the next task, which is fine. But one thing that I'm concerned about is that if the students, you know, need that extra, if you, for example, if you look into the back end of APELS and you find that the children are really struggling in some parts, then you can say, okay, let's look at the organs again, because this is obviously where they're struggling. So
Good job.
So again, this is a kind of motivation. They get direct feedback. They get
The
instant
stomach
feedback.
produces digestive juices, which are mixed with the partially digested food. The digestive juices in the stomach partially breaks down protein in food into simpler substances.
Yeah, so that's basically, you know, an explanation. And then if you go to something like here.
Digestion does not take place in the esophagus or gullet. The esophagus only transports food from the mouth to the stomach.
Try again.
So as we saw, then they're talking about the gullet, and that was in one of the questions that we had in the APELS. I think it was the second question of this particular learning resource. So in that case, then it would be, if, for example, when you look at the analytics of APELS and you find that perhaps students think that the gullet is actually part of the digestive system for this, then you will be able to say, okay, let's go over this resource, this interactive resource again, and let's do this in class.
Excellent.
So again, a motivator, so it can keep the students going.
The mouth is where digestion of food begins. Food is broken down into smaller pieces and mixed with saliva, which digests large sugar molecules into smaller sugars.
Well done.
Okay, so you can then go on to finding out, okay, you can, oops, so done, so that's done. Yay! So after that particular activity, then you can go back to APELS, and you can use then, you know, for example, can anybody from that activity remember which is the stomach? And then they can submit that and then go forward. And it takes you on to the next step. So you've got, and this, they may then be familiar with it because it was just used in one of the other demonstrations that you've used in the STEMWerkz channel. So you can like go back and forth between using APELS in the classroom and using STEMWerkz in the classroom. or you can do an intensive session of looking at these different stories. You know, for example, this one here, you've got an actual
Follow the
video.
pathway of food down the human digestive system. Click the Start button to watch how food is digested and transported. The mouth is the organ where food first enters our body. The gullet is a long, muscular tube that connects the mouth to the stomach. The muscles in the gullet contract and relax to push food down to the stomach. The stomach is a muscular bag that can be stretched and increased in size after a heavy meal. The muscles in the stomach contract and relax to mix the food with digestive juices for up to 4 hours. The small intestine is a long, muscular tube. Digestive juices are released into the small intestine to complete digestion of the food. All digested food is absorbed into the bloodstream. Take a closer look at the walls of the small intestine. Watch how the digested food enters the bloodstream to be carried by the circulatory system to all parts of the body. The large intestine does not digest or absorb any food. However, it performs a crucial role. It absorbs water from the undigested food and forms feces, which is stored in the rectum. What are substances X, Y, and Z? Drag and drop the substances that X, Y, and Z represent correctly into the flowchart.
Okay, so this is like really, again, like you have the demonstration and then the practice, and then you can go on when needed to the actual, you know, very kind of tight evaluation about the digestive system. So, for example, here, food enters, chewing of food, involuntary muscular contraction to move food down the gullet, and then churning of food and digestion. So what do we have here? Let's have a look. Complete digestion. And let's see. Check.
Try again. Good job.
So I really like this because, you know, as I mentioned before, then with this particular one, you can get it wrong, but the feedback doesn't come immediately. What you'll see is the actual feedback when you look into the, as a teacher, when you look into the analytics, and then that will tell you whether the students are struggling or not. Whereas this one is more, it can be self-directed learning. So, for example, if you find that, like, you do this, the evaluation in APELS, and you find out that a particular student needs help with understanding digestion or understanding the organs, then you can ask them to look at this particular learning resource, and they can do it at home, so they can use their self-directed learning and access that material. Or you can say, if you know there is a group of students that are having difficulty, you can say, all right, let's look at this together, and then that will help you then when you want to do the evaluation, whether that be at home or in class itself. And so what I love about this is that it also crosses over different topics. So it's not only about the actual, you know, digestive system itself, but it's also how that system works, and it gives students the chance to actually practice by, observing, but then also saying, okay, like, try and remember, but also to inquire a little bit, okay, and understand the process of science, which is, going from one thing to another in a logical sequence and understanding that sequence. So yeah, you can put all that together with the actual APELS resource, where this is more holistic and can be self-directed, but you can also use it within the class itself. And then you can go back to the actual evaluation and testing, or diagnostic, if you like, to see where they're at. So it's really about going back and forth. So if we look here, then this is a little bit similar.
The body system is made up of many organs.
So this is quite similar to this illustration here. So if, for example, they've struggled particularly on this aspect, then you can bring this to the whole class.
And fill in the blanks.
So obviously this is a lot more than what you see in this one here, but nevertheless, it gives students really the chance to be more holistic about it and see that it's not just, one aspect, and they can have like the whole body. And what's quite good about this, you notice that I'm doing them differently depending, it doesn't have to be linear, and it's really up to you. Like, for example, if you do this in class, then you can say, all right, we just did the respiratory system, let's start off with this, or we did the bone structure, should we start off with this? Or you could do it like a call and answer. So you could say, okay, class, can you tell me, out of all this, where does, can you tell me which one would fit where? And they can either run up to the board if it's like a interactive whiteboard, or if they have their own stations where they're doing it in pairs, they can do it in partners. Like A takes a turn and then B takes a turn. And then if B doesn't know the answer, then A can help B, not by maybe saying, the right answer, but saying, for example, if they're looking for, let's see, if they're looking for something like a gullet, and one of the students doesn't know the answer, but the other student does, then you can say, try like, if they're looking here and they don't know what goes here, then they say something like, okay, try looking at something begins with a G, or, well, it's actually, there's only one thing there, but, or they could choose, you could actually do it the other way around, where you choose a particular word, so gullet, and then you could say, the other student can say, try looking where you can see the large and small intestine. And so they would have to know what the large and small intestine is in order to know which picture the gullet goes into, for example, there. Or, they could do it like, the student may want to say, give the other student some clues, like, the gullet, not saying the word gullet, but something like, the food is going down a kind of pipe. Can you put, that in, can you put that word into and match it with the pipe? So there are different ways. I'm just brainstorming. Those are quite sort of different ways in which you can ask the students to help each other through peer-to-peer learning. Or you can do it, teacher-centric for a while, or you can do it in pairs. where they help each other, you know, at stations perhaps, or as groups. But they don't have to just be silent and move the words to a particular place. You can encourage questions such as, you know, do you remember when we looked at the respiratory system? If you're stuck on one thing like where does the heart go, then look at the picture where you would see all the veins, and so they would have to know what veins are. Or look at the picture where you see the blood, and so they would, you know, immediately probably then go to here. So that might help by asking different questions. And then you can then ask the students to go back to the apples and see if they could then then they could answer the questions here, which is a bit more controlled, whereas this one is a bit more open for discovery learning and inquiry-based learning. So for example, here the illustration below shows different organ systems in a human being. Which of the organ systems shown above breaks food down into simpler substances? Now this is a very, very specific question. So it's a lot more kind of controlled than, say, something like this, which is a bit more discovery learning. So I'm going to wrap it up for now, but I will do another video at the weekend, which gives a bit more of an idea about how you can use APELS, which is the more controlled evaluation tool, with the more discovery learning and holistic tool, which can be done self-directed or with parents or at home, but also can be done in the classroom because, you know, there is this aspect of showing the particular resources, but then also having the interactivity with it as well. So I hope that helps, and feel free to reach out to me for any questions.